So the ideal system is, once again, looking at a whole ecosystem again, it seems like to have animals mixed with planting of crops. I mean, or can you, because I've seen other like permaculture systems where they have like pigs, they let them in certain areas, or chickens, they'll go through certain areas, they'll release them, or ducks even. I think they do that quite a lot in Indonesia as well, where you see they kind of release them into one area to get all the insects out. So that obviously feeds the ducks and they eat those as well, but they would also use them as a part, instead of say using insecticides, send the ducks in, they'll go and eat everything. And the same with even other types of insects. Sometimes you can use ecological solutions to keep certain pests at in balance within the ecosystem. So it's not just the concept of kill everything except the thing we want to grow. It's manage a whole ecosystem of various species interacting in healthy ways, which goes from larger species like chickens or ducks down to the micro organisms in the soil, and which also reflects back into our bodies, which our bodies are ecosystems as well, of like whole microbiome in our guts and all that. And it seems to me, it always seems to be coming back to realize everything's an ecosystem, realize we're an ecosystem, the agricultural system should be an ecosystem too. But that obviously involves a lot more understanding of various processes happening and interacting. It's not as simple as put input in, get something out. Put these ingredients in. You need to be monitoring lots of different things. And I think with data collection and again, AI would be able to show the results of different combinations of species or systems interacting with one another to give various results, which would then inform what you do on the next round, etc.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. I mean, this is one of the themes that Chris and I talk about, is this, if farming is complex enough as it is, but as you've described, industrial agriculture tries to make things as basic and as plug and play and as monoculture as possible. What you're alluding to with permaculture is I think, is the principle of diversity and stacking different enterprises on top of one another. That's definitely true of regenerative farming. That's a pattern, and it implies that the shift is one towards a more knowledge management intensive industry that requires adaptive shifting decision making.
Yeah.
And so data is a huge component of this, and many of our investments are going to be leveraging data.
Sure. Okay. Like what other data? So you're looking at the data of soil?
Well, for example, soil carbon.
Right.
So Chris was talking about the climate community, the climate investment community. The climate investment community has a sort of the same thesis, which is the net zero thesis, is that if we can reduce industrial emissions to practically zero by 2050, we will escape the worst heating effects of global warming. There's an additional scientific thesis which points out that even if we were to be successful at reducing all of those emissions, the CO2 that has become acidified in our oceans over the last 100 years will re-equilibrate with the atmosphere.
Right.
Because, principles of osmosis, you create a vacuum, the CO2 will fill that vacuum. So in our world, in our climate thesis, carbon drawdown, so drawing down as much CO2 as possible into natural ecosystems, into the oceans and into the soils in our land and into trees, is absolutely mission critical.
Right.
And it's by drawing down the carbon and rebuilding our soils that we get these other massive co-benefits. By repairing the water cycle, we're essentially rebuilding the planet's natural ability to cool itself, these refrigeration effects, which allow us to balance out incident solar radiation.
I see. And what's an example of a company that's helping do those kind of things?
I can't say the name of the specific company that we're about to invest into,
right.
But I can say that the founders cut their teeth as high-level mathematicians working with very large environmental data sets.
Okay.
So they pioneered research in establishing where, for example, Ebola outbreaks would occur in Africa by crunching large amounts of environmental data, and they're applying that same thinking to how we measure the world's soils.
I see. Interesting. And how many companies are you guys looking at before you filter down to the ones that make it into the portfolio?
I think we've got 700 in our pipe at the moment.
Wow. Yeah, it grows pretty quickly.
14 billion sterling in terms of that 700's next round requirements for funding.
Wow.
So the opportunity for fund managers in this space, and the reason that we are hopefully being the opposite of proprietary and protectionist, we want to be as inclusive as possible in terms of encouraging more fund managers into this space as possible. The opportunity for many of us to exist, I say many, I mean there could be 20, 30, 40 funds at 50 to 100 million looking at this space, and I still don't think there'd be a saturation point.
And these are all startups?
So we say startups,
so
so we invest pre-seed to Series A, which for those that, I don't know how well your audience know this space, but a pre-seed company is pre-revenue. It's an idea. It might be a very small team. A late Series A company could be doing double-digit million revenue, hopefully on some kind of on a margin that makes sense, raising upwards of between 20 and 40 million for that particular round. So it's a pretty large swathe. And the amount of companies that we see that are operating within a very specific sector or section of that farm to fork value chain that are already offering a more viable, a more economically useful for the whether it's the farmer or the corporate or the entity that is transitioning, as well as producing a better product, exists to a point where we feel incredibly privileged to be able to sit as one of the, I'm hesitant to use the word pioneering venture firms in this space, but we're one of a very small handful.
I would say that.
So, and the opportunities really do abound. And I suppose one of the pieces that makes it more exciting for us than potentially going into a very saturated space in terms of investor is the fact that because across this farm to fork value chain, so much of the science is nascent, whether this is our understanding of the soil or hydrology, latent cooling systems, or how we bioassimilate food, or how we get consumers to shift their consumption patterns quickly. It's produced this enormous dirge of companies, as I say, but also the either the experts or the researchers or the vocal components of those. So the people that are either hosting the radio shows or writing the books, or Dr. Chris getting his shows on TV, or the supermarkets that are leading the space. Like, I mean, I've used Waitrose as an example. Because we're the first fund into this space, we get to have access to a lot of these, I mean, we call them our heroes, but a lot of these drivers. And that not only allows us to have fairly cutting edge, as modestly as I'd say it, access to best information, but it also allows us access to an incredibly or disproportionately active network. And if our team is only ever going to consist of a very small handful of us, because we believe in full accountability, essentially, and having to know our companies that we're investing in or preparing to invest in incredibly well, then it allows us to be a small team who technically are low touch. You have venture firms that would have many people working with each portfolio company post-investment to make sure that they are hitting their KPIs and they are progressing in a way that is optimal for the investor. We obviously can't afford to do that. So we are by definition low touch investors, but because we have such a disproportionately active network, whether that's the big farming groups in the UK, whether it's DEFRA, whether it's the ministers, whether it's any of the big food corporates that operate within the UK, whether it's any of the largest investors globally looking at this space, whether it's West Coast Silicon Valleyites, many of whom bring a level of experience and technical knowledge that is, very differentiated to what we might have in the UK, or whether it's universities here, we're able to bring those parties together and really forge progress. And that, I suppose, is is what's so exciting about where we are, and really, I think, creates a duty for Simon and I, who are now fairly long in the tooth of this, to actually like really get moving.
Sure.